Hello, everybody, and welcome back to video 22 in this series, I think, somewhere in the early 20s. This is a bunch of prep work for me. I'm doing a summer camp for high schoolers later this summer, interested in game development. So I was kind of condensing what's normally a one semester long course uh, into a week, 3 hours a day for 5 days to try to get a good introduction to game development. So I wanted to practice my lecture plan and get. Uh, I decided instead of deleting the videos after I get my lecture notes adjusted, I will just share this on YouTube because other people might be interested in it. So we've been at this a while. It's up to video 22, trying for about 15 minutes on each video. And we built this landscape and added a character in, started doing some stuff in our environment and moving the character around, getting some animations in. But there are two very big, eh, important questions we haven't addressed yet. Um, why is our character moving? What is it supposed to be doing? What's its end goal? Just wander randomly around the world? That doesn't quite seem like an interesting thing. So this video is getting into one of the most important aspects of game development that so often gets overlooked in tutorials like we find on YouTube where I'll be posting these videos, and that's storytelling. Uh, what are we doing this for? Why is our character going through certain actions and going to different places? And what's the reason for all of this? And storytelling is something humans have studied for thousands and thousands of years. There's been a lot of study put into what makes good storytelling and bad storytelling. And just because we have a new medium to tell a story in does not mean we should disregard that thousands of years worth of knowledge about storytelling that humanity has built up. So I'm just going to do a quick few notes here. Um, to kind of get started, but that's something that you'll want to look into, maybe a formal class. It would be well, I'm speaking English, so I assume if you're watching this video, you speak English. I'm going to refer to that, but it would apply to other languages in the world as well. That's something you would actually want to go take an English course on creative writing or whatever language you speak. And especially with creative writing, that's something in most cities at community centers all over the place. You can regularly find free or very cheap classes on creative writing. Those like 2 week long things, a couple hours each night, where you go in and hear a lecture about uh, creative writing, storytelling, that sort of thing, and then get some practice by writing short stories. Those are all over the place. Uh, every community college and university around would definitely have a creative writing course. So something you might want to look into because that is a critical aspect of game development. That's what we're doing here. We're telling a story. So let's talk about that a little here. All right. So getting into storytelling here, and normally in the classroom when I teach this, intro to game development in fall semesters and advanced game development in spring semesters. This is also the point where I bring up other careers, I guess, that are almost identical to game development, in particular, simulations for engineers, right? Any more engineers do all the stuff on with computer aided design and they run simulations, and that's pretty much identical to game development, how that simulation runs. The difference comes in the storytelling of it. With the video game, we want to make it challenging enough for the character or the player to actually succeed and get to the end of the story to make it fun. But with a simulation for engineers, the same concepts, but what really changes is how hard we try to stop it. Because we wouldn't want to say, stop the engineer, have the computer stop the engineer from seeing what happens when their new suspension system goes for 200,000 miles. Where's the break point or something like that? So Storytelling is the separation there, and that's another field where these skills do apply. So I'll mention that in these videos. Kind of the same thing, a lot of the same thing between game development and simulations for engineers. The differences in the story we're telling and how hard the game or simulation is going to try to stop the person running it, playing it. So we're just going to have a few key elements to talk about here. Things you probably want to know. The basic idea of a story. The first thing we want to do is introduce our characters. Whoops, I spelled that wrong. Introduce our characters. And once the player knows who the characters in the game are, the plot thickens. And afterwards, one of two things is going to happen. Either resolution, that's supposed to be an O there, or absolution. Hopefully that generalization right there sounds very familiar from stories you've encountered. Maybe books you've read, movies you've seen, TV shows, any place we're telling a story, that's our general pattern. We do some sort of introduction, the plot thickens, interesting things happen, and then either resolution or absolution. Resolution, the technical definition is going to be quality of being determined, right? We reach the end of the story, we uh, achieve our goal. And absolution is formal release from guilt, obligation, or punishment. Those are the technical definitions. Um, Resolution is when we hit the natural end of the story, and absolution is when it's finished enough. So, resolution would be like, oh, so resolution would be like the end of the Hunger Games when the corrupt government has been knocked down and a new, hopefully righteous government has been put in their place. I guess that happens a little bit before the end. Things fall apart at the end. And absolution would be like the Die Hard movies. Uh, at the end of the Die Hard movies, it doesn't matter how much stuff was blown up or how much destruction happened, the hero stopped the terrorists along the way. So we're not going to pay any attention to the destruction and stuff. So game stories probably lend a little bit more to this way for some of the things that make it fun play. But that's what leads into the basic three act system in a game. So Act One is going to be what's going on and um, and who's involved. These questions: what's going on, and who's involved. When we get down to Act Two, and that is step it up a notch. That's what I put in my notes getting ready here. Step it up a notch. The interesting things happen. Make the stakes dire. And finally, we get to Act Three, where for better or worse, wrap it up quickly. So that's our traditional, I'm gonna switch to blue color. That's our traditional three-act story, a general way to tell a story, what's going on, who's involved. So oftentimes in video games, translating this over to video games, that's going to be our cutscenes, um, sort of the intro, whoops, the intro or learn control level. Those little levels right at the beginning of the game where that are mostly just there so the player can learn how the controls work in the game. Act 2, step it up a notch. This is our gameplay. So as far as video games, they're going to almost all happen in the gameplay that make the stakes dire. This after introducing our characters, after we introduce our characters, we put them in the worst situation they can possibly be in. And that's where most of the gameplay happens, but we don't want to skip over Act 1 and get right into gameplay because the storytelling lets the character to know where they should be going, what they should be doing, right? There's a flow to that story. And then finally, we get over to Act 3, where for better or worse, we wrap it up quickly. And this would be like the boss fights in our game. People are impatient. The middle part is the interesting part. Act 2 is where all the interesting stuff happens. And people are very impatient. So when we get to Act 3, we want to wrap it up quickly. And this 3-act version flows nicely into the general structure of a video game. Our cutscenes or that introduction level where we learn the controls and the player learns what to do. Then all the interesting stuff happens, all the fun parts of the game, and the story just kind of guides them through it, gives them hints on where they should be going next and what they should be doing and how they'll know when they're finished. And then finally, Act 3, the wrapping everything up, the resolution and absolution happens with the boss fights. A lot more absolution in a video game than resolution. But that's the first, the general structure we want to follow. And I have some notes straight from an English teacher. When I teach the game development course normally, I went ahead and went to the English teachers that my students will have had in their English classes and asked them if they would share their creative writing notes with me. So I go through all those key points and talk about the translation, kind of like what we just did here with Act 1, 2, and 3. I'll do that in the next video and just do a quick intro to storytelling. But that is one of the most important aspects of a game. So please don't overlook it. And getting good at storytelling might involve you going and taking some creative writing courses at a community center or a community college or a university or wherever the best situation for you to do that is. Because humans have studied storytelling in detail for many thousands and thousands of years. We don't need to discard that knowledge just because we have a new medium. So it looks like we're coming on 13 minutes. So I will jump in with some key terms from creative writing and try to relate those into a video, how they apply in video games in the next video. I'll see you then.